These are way shorter again.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Bodgy Birders. So today is suspension day and this thing's getting close to ready to test out. So I was just going to run my factory suspension on the first few times learning, but they're pretty shot. They're all leaking and all the bump stops are all degraded, so I ended up buying some coilovers. Ta-da! So they're eBay coils, Maxpeeding rods. So I've seen these kicking around. Some people love them, some people hate them. They are on the budget side of things. But these ones are seem to be the second generation. They've only sort of just released these, and they actually cost a bit more. And they look like they're quite a step up. Just a lot better hardware from what I've seen. So they got the pillow ball top mount now. And they sent me an extra box of parts and an extra email informing me to swap these out with the current lower mount, as that may be a point of weakness. So that's good. That means they're at least, iterating and trying to improve on their design. They went to the effort to send an upgraded, superseded part. So it must be this sway bar mount here must fatigue on the thread over time, because they've just replaced the whole lot with the sway bar link attached. But I'm not running a front sway bar, so I'm just going to do away with that altogether. But it's good that they at least try and, keep everything top notch. These are fairly new on the market too, so I guess I'll be kind of a test guinea pig, see how these go. I would have loved to put some HSYs or BC coilovers or something under this. But the whole point of this was to have as much fun as I can at the lowest cost. And I've already spent too much, especially with all these other dramas that are going on with it. I'm probably going to trash this thing a fair bit while I'm learning anyway, so I don't really want to put expensive hardware under it if I'm going to just trash it in the end. I'll start with these, and then if I get better over time, I'll get something serious under it. First things first, I'm going to be lowering it. So I need to see where it sits height-wise. Alright, left rear we got 36 centimeters, front left got 38, and all the rest are 36 too, so that one's a little bit higher, but doesn't matter, we've got our base setting. So I'm going to do the rear first. So I've got the springs. If I can do away without these adjusters on the back, I'll be happy. So the plan is get the old shocks and springs out, put these under it only without any shocks or anything, and then put the wheels back on, lower it and see how low it actually is. If it's way too low, then I'll put these in, because I don't want to be bottoming out and everything. But I'm just going to do that and see what happens. Disconnected both rear shocks only so far. Reason being is if you do one side and you're having trouble getting the suspension down, it's probably because the sway bar is on the other side holding it up. So instead of having to undo the whole sway bar, if you just undo the other side, they'll both hang down equally. And then with it a full droop like that, without the shock connected, you should be able to get your arm in, lever this part of your arm against there, and grab the spring. Happy days. Easy as. Looks like it's probably 2.5 to 3 inches lower, which sounds about right. This kit says lowering ranges from 1 to 3 inches. This is a higher spring rate, so it won't compress as much, so hopefully it's not going to bottom out as easily. So we'll chuck this in as is and see what happens. Oh yeah. So I got only the springs on both sides fitted, because they're essentially what supports the weight of the car and essentially the height on the rear anyway. So I'll just chuck the wheels on and I'll see how low we go. Yep, that sits pretty good with all those beautiful dents there. See, the top of the tyre is under there, but if I ever get wider wheel spaces or bigger wheels, it should be exactly where I want it. Alright, so that's settled. I won't be using any of these. Alright, so we're now at 33.5 centimetres. So yeah, it's gone down about an inch, which is good. I didn't want it dumped on its ass. It's probably going to go a bit lower too when everything settles. But we'll set up the shocks now, and that'll be the rear all done. So as well as up travel, we've got to consider down travel. So this is at full droop, meaning this shock absorber is fully stretched out and supporting the weight of all this. But if we get too much down travel, like I launch the thing and it drops out and this is too loose and pops out, then we've got all sorts of dramas. So even though it's encased here now, it's still a bit loose. I don't really want that. So we'll have to at least have the full extension of the new shock up a little bit higher so we don't lose the spring if we launch it. Alright, so I'll just use the ground as a reference point. 250 from the ground to the bottom of the shock at full droop. And then I'll just jack this a bit. Yeah, that's all it took, one little bit, and it's still a bit secure in there. Just measure this. 270. So because this is an inch lower, we should be able to safely make the full droop of the new shock an inch shorter than this one at full droop, and that should stop our spring from like flying out on us. All right, take these suckers off from the inside. Hey! All right, wow, well, so these actually don't have that much travel at all in comparison. OEM shock, stretched out as far as possible, and I've bled this one up, and that's it. That's heap short. It's just got a lot of winding to go to make it near the other one. Wow. I mean, it probably doesn't need as much travel if the spring rate's a bit higher. The shocks themselves are a lot more beefy, so hopefully that makes up for it. So I guess I'll just thread this in till all the thread inside here is covered and see how we go. Alright, so now I've pulled the spring out and fitted the shock. It's back to how it came out of the box. We'll see how high this goes without the spring before it bottoms out. That's where it sits, just with the shock at its full stretch, which is crazy. So yeah, we can't keep it like that. Okay, yeah, so that's what we don't want. We don't want the spring binding up before the shock hits its bump, which that looks like it would. And we still got that much travel. So yeah, out of the box, they're not set up anywhere near. So we'll wind her out a bit. And that should give us more height, which means it'll come closer to its bump before we get there, if you know what I mean. All right, so out of curiosity, I've just put the tyre back on to see how far up it goes with the shock set at its current state without the spring in there. Looks like the tyre makes it all the way in. Good. So what I wanted to work out was when the spring maxes out. So the coil thickness itself is 13.5 mil. So I just multiplied that by 5 and I end up with 67.5. So that should be how thick the coil is if it's fully compressed, which is extreme. So I don't even want to go that far. But what I'm going to do with this is disconnect the shock again, put this in here till it hits. That's will be the spring maxing out, and then I'll adjust this to suit. All right, I adjusted it right out while that was pushed up. Didn't record for some reason, but anyway, we'll test it now. Lock under there. Yep, sweet. So that's the shocky fully bottomed out, and our little bit of wood isn't quite touching, which is what we want. We want this to bottom out before the spring does. So that'll be our setting. So I'll measure that as a base setting and set the other side. All right, back's all done. Everything's all tight. Now I'll move on to the front, which should be a bit easier. All things considered, this should be pretty easy on these. One clamping bolt there, and the 3 strut tops. It's just getting the height right will be what the drama is. So out of the box again, these are way shorter again. Instructions said that they were preset to like a base setting. That's like, I don't know, 3 inches. Anyway, like the rear, will trial and error this again. I'm not running sway bars anyway, so I'm just going to wind the whole bottom off and get this off. So set them aside, don't need them anymore. Can use them as little egg rings when I go camping. Anyway, they look a lot cleaner now. I'm just going to do them at the base setting that they have them at and just see what happens, because maybe there's a reason for that. We're now at 32.5 on this side. Yeah, that's a bit too low for me because I'm eventually going to get more offset wheels and I don't want any scrubbing. So looking at it, I think I might want to try and get this line with the trim of the car, that grey line. I might want to try and get that as level as possible. So bringing up the front a little bit more so that line is fairly horizontal. This one at the back is 540. That one's 470. So that's a fair bit low. I don't think I'm going to get the front that high, but we'll bring it up a bit anyway. All the tyre pressures have been set as well, so I know what you're saying. That's not well, it's a little bit of a factor, but they're all the same as it sits now. All right, that's all set now. So I just took these out completely, jacked it up, and then I could spin the whole shaft by hand to adjust the height without pulling the whole thing out. So with these gone, I could just spin the whole thing internally underneath until I got the right height, and then I could just sit the car back down in this cavity without putting those back in and see the height. Then when it was right, I'd do them up. So I just went an inch lower on the front from what it originally was, or thereabouts, and the back as low as it could go. So I'll just do a final measurement on all of them now, and then I'll recheck them after I go for a drive. Alright, cut to, it's been a few weeks now and I've actually had a chance to test these coilovers on the track, which was super fun, by the way. We had a few issues, but the coilovers weren't one of them. They actually performed pretty good. One thing I've heard about the older generation of the Maxpeedingrods is that they're like driving on bricks. I didn't get that feeling from these at all. They were actually felt like really firm, held to the track, but drivability was still good. I feel like you could use these as daily drivers just fine. It's hard to judge them on longevity yet, but I'll get back to you on that one. But for grassroots drifting, they seem pretty good. So if you're just starting out and you're on a bit of a budget like me, I would give them a go. Unless you got money to torch on better ones, which I don't. The full track day vid will be up in a couple of weeks. So make sure you're subscribed and you hit the bell if you want to get notified of when that one drops. If you've already subscribed with me, then you've caught my journey with this at the beginning, and there's heaps more to come. Nevertheless, thanks for all the support. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.